It's early 2000s. I'm a second year PhD student at UMass Amherst in the computer science department. So one morning I woke up with this gritty, sandy feeling in my mouth and I was like, I wonder what happened. I'd brushed my teeth the night before, maybe a spider fell in my mouth. I remember this urban legend that says we swallow 8 spiders a night or something like that. So it turns out it was something way scarier. I was grinding my teeth in my sleep so hard that one of my back tooth had chipped. And according to my dentist, teeth grinding is often caused by stress. And he was totally right. I was super stressed out at the time because I was failing grad school. So in grad school, you are expected to come up with a worthwhile problem to solve and then go solve it. I was studying artificial intelligence and I thought it was the coolest thing. And I had came up with a few problems to work on. But after spending months tackling them, some problems turned out to be just versions of problems that were already solved, and other problems turned out to be stupid after I broke it down farther. So I was getting nowhere. And my dream at the time was to become an AI researcher and build smart robots. I was failing miserably, and to salvage things, I would put in extra time on the weekends. But I couldn't bring myself to go into the lab, so I would ask my boyfriend at the time to walk me to school. And that's how miserable I was and how much I dreaded work. And if you ever had a job that you hated, maybe you can relate. But knowing what we don't want doesn't always translate to a path of what we do want, or tell us what we should do. Should I suck it up and tough it out? Should I quit and do something else? Should I go start my own thing? Now, how big of a change should I make, if at all? To figure out our next steps, the answer usually starts by first understanding our career energy profile. Now, let me show you what it is, and I'll use my grad school experience as an example. These 5 factors, interest, purpose, competence, personality, and needs, together determine how energetic we feel on a day-to-day basis. Each factor has the power to boost our energy or drain our energy. Now, where you are for each factor can change over time, but you can figure out on an average day at your job where you are for each of these factors. So in my example, my competence was at the very bottom of the range. Now, I'll put it right about here. And when it's in the negative range, it's signifying that it's an energy drain. The farther down you are, the bigger drain it is. In this case, my incompetence at conducting research was stressing me out so much that I had chipped a tooth. Now, other symptoms people often experience are stomach ulcers, trouble sleeping at night, hair loss, overeating, drinking, and anxiety attacks. All of them are very draining to our daily energy. Now, on the other hand, if you're highly competent at your job, you can get an energy boost. You'll feel on top of things, in control, and in your element. And another factor that affects our energy is interest. If you're bored to tears and eyeing the clock every other minute, then you're at the bottom range for this graph, which means your boredom is draining your energy. In my case, I wasn't bored. I was pretty interested in AI research, but the interest is actually a little more complicated. I was interested in the ideas in AI. For example, I was working on this problem of how a robot can learn human concepts like big, small, light, or heavy by clustering time series data of its interactions with various objects. The idea was fascinating, but when it came down to the actual work though, debugging hardware when the robot breaks, which was pretty much every day, writing code and learning more statistics, I just wasn't that into it. I saw these tasks as necessary evils in order to get my results, but not enjoyable in their own right. When we choose our career and what we do for a living, we've got to realize that at some point we'll be competing with people just as talented as we are. If they're 10 times more obsessed, they're bound to win out in the long run. Now, overall, I put my interest about here because even though I like the topic of AI, the process of doing AI research was not so interesting to me. The opposite of this now can also be true. You can feel nothing for the topic of paper, but really enjoy the process of running a paper company. In that case, your day-to-day experience of interest will be way higher, And when we think about interest, we really want to focus on the day-to-day tasks and how much we enjoy them. As you can see from the picture here, our interest is the thing that brings the biggest boost to our energy. When we're truly engaged in our task, we enter the flow state. What puts you into a flow state? Now, for some people, it's rock climbing. For other people, it's painting watercolors. Apparently, surgeons often get into the flow state when they're performing surgeries, and they miss that feeling when they go on vacations. The next factor is our sense of purpose, or how meaningful we feel our job is. In my grad school example, I'd be somewhere around here. Now, I felt that at the time that AI research is worthwhile and could lead to good things for humanity. Now, that's a little more debatable with my current understanding. But in any case, it's kind of an abstract feeling and not super strong. Our sense of purpose can be very personal. Even doing the same exact task, some people can feel a sense of purpose while others don't. You might have heard of the bricklayer's parable. So one day you came upon 3 bricklayers busy at work. Now you ask them, what are they doing? The first bricklayer answers, I'm laying bricks. So he sees what he's doing as a task. The second one says, I'm building a church. He sees himself as a builder, it's a job. Now the third bricklayer wiped the sweat from his brow and says with reverence, I'm building the house of God. Now he sees the task as his calling and experiences a deep sense of meaning because it connects to something that is deeply meaningful to him. Even though they're doing the same exact thing, they feel very differently. Now, of course, then there's this guy. Okay, so now I want to share my purpose in life. I discovered it toward the end of grad school, and it's guided me in every career transition I've had ever since to finally becoming a career coach. My purpose is to experience connections, both mentally between ideas that I find exciting and also interpersonally with other people. It can be captured by this picture of 2 kids holding hands and running together. They're not running toward anything or away from anything. They're running because they're excited and they have each other. And this is the way I commit to living my life, and it's the specific way I want to help the world. Now, some people devote their life to helping the hungry, some fight for justice. I want to help people feel connected and run free. Now, having a sense of purpose at our job can give us an energy boost. Without it, we may feel a little empty when things are, even when things are going well on the surface. In general, though, on a day-to-day basis, this sense of slight emptiness is usually in the background and not too bothersome. And generally not as bad as feeling of boredom when we have low interest or when we have anxiety attacks when we have low competence. So that's why the negative range for purpose is smaller than both competence and interest. It just doesn't negative impact our energy as much. So by this point, you're probably wondering, where do these ranges come from? Even though I'm displaying these bars with certain heights in a quantitative way, they're really more qualitative in nature. You may want to think of them as general guidelines. Now, this is a framework I created to help people better visualize their career situation. It combines ideas from social science research and my experience coaching hundreds of people. It basically captures my intuition as a coach, and it's more of an art than a science, which is really my way of saying that. It's kind of hand-wavy, but people have found it helpful in the past, so I'm sharing it here. From my experience as a coach, this is how I see the 5 factors impact people on average. You're free to tweak these default ranges slightly so they better reflect your personal situation. Now, for example, maybe you're someone who really hates being bored. When you're bored, you feel really drained and unhappy. In that case, you want to extend the negative range for interest down just a bit. This is saying that being bored has a bigger negative impact on your energy. All right, so personality is next. How well your job matches your personality can affect how energetic you feel on a day-to-day basis. Now, I'm an extrovert, so when I was stuck fixing the robot late at night all by myself in the lab, I was lonely and I was miserable. So I put myself right about here. Another good way to get a feel of how good your job matches your personality is to conduct this thought experiment. So pretend for a second that your best friend is a fly on the wall at your place of work, observing your every move. Now, would your friend be surprised by what she sees? Now, take a second to ponder that. If you start cringing, then you probably are behaving that way at work because you feel like you ought to. Now, some people try to act more authoritative than they are when they're really a prankster at heart, or they force themselves to be extroverted just so we appear more friendly. Now feeling ourselves and having to put on a bit of an act every day can be really taxing. When our job matches our personality well, we feel at ease, and this gives us small energy boost. Not as much of a boost as if we had high interest or high competence, but every bit of boost counts. So for personality, you mainly want to focus on avoid terrible job personality fits. Now, last but not least, needs is another important factor that affects our energy. As you can see, needs act a little differently than the other 4 factors in that it's a total downer. It has the biggest negative potential to drain our energy and 0 positive. Now, this makes intuitive sense. If our need for financial security is not met, we're starving on the street, it probably doesn't matter how interested or purposeful we feel at our job, which is why it's so negative. Now, let me show you why needs doesn't give us any energy boost and only drains. So if you're watching this video right now, chances are you don't have a splitting headache, but you're not jumping up and down in joy, right? Celebrating your headache free. When our needs are met, we tend to take it for granted and not experience a positive boost. A work-related example would be your need for natural light. If you have an office with a window, you may not think much of it. But the day you get moved to an interior office with no windows, it's the day you start feeling super miserable and complain to anyone who would listen. So here are some examples of work-related needs. Do you get along with your boss or coworkers? Do you feel that you're being treated fairly? Oftentimes it's not how much money we're getting paid as are we being valued and are we being paid fairly compared to others? How long is your commute? Now, this is certainly not an exhaustive list, but just to get you thinking about the topic. Now, my need in grad school, I'll put somewhere around here. Not terrible. As you can see, overall, my job as a research assistant back in the day was much more energy draining than energy boosting, which is not a surprise given what I told you about my teeth grinding. Now, what the career energy profile does is that it breaks down that vague sense of badness into exactly what's causing it. And once we see the cause more clearly, we can better plot our next move. And I'll cover how to use your career energy profile to plan your next steps in a future video. Okay, so now I've walked you through an example and explained what a career energy profile is. Now, I'll just show you 2 quick pictures so we can make sure it drills home. This one is what I call the cog in the machine profile. She has high competence, low interest, low purpose. Another example is this caricature of a workaholic startup founder. Super high interest, super high purpose, lowish competence because startups often involve dealing with tough problems that we're not prepared for. Needs is low because that person is ignoring her personal relationships because she just has no time outside of work. Having a career we're passionate about means having a career energy profile where we're hitting the top range of all 5 of these factors. When that happens, we have tons of energy boosts and little to no energy drains, and we're filled with energy on a daily basis. So take a minute to draw your own career energy profile. When you're done, feel free to take a picture and email it to me. I'd love to see it.